Hey, everybody. That is Gary Smith. That is Kaz Kenny.
Kapow!
And I am Eddie Bramble. And we are back with episode 21 of the Blackwaters Edge podcast.
Thank God.
It's about time.
Yeah, man.
Kaz, why don't you start us off with this month's fishing report?
Yeah, right? So we got a little bit of everything unfolding right now here in Blackwater, okay? Here in the complex, you got fish that are trying to bed. They've got canopies created, they're laying under the side of the bank, and we're just waiting to see a few fry balls. And I have a good feeling that we're going to see our first fry ball here in the next week or two. That's what I'm thinking here. These temperatures are going to hit 80 this weekend, so we know them shallows are going to heat up, and we know them boys and girls, snakeheads, they're going to go to work. So let's get ready for that. In the meantime, the fish that are not pairing or on the beds that are still out there and they're chewing like crazy, plenty of them out there, man. Everybody's catching plenty of fish. The guys that are thinking outside the box and getting away from the crowds and doing what they got to do, they're coming home with a home run and a grand slam every time they come, man. Look, and don't forget, man, when you're down here on the Eastern Shore and you got to have some bait, you got to call Cornflower and Damien or give me a text or whatever. We'll make sure you get some of those snakehead destroyers. So that's what you need to have down here right now when them fish get finicky and they don't want to look at that lure and they're thinking about doing the hamba mamba. You know what I mean? You got to entice them with a little food, man. You put some food in front of me, I'm ready to chow down and go. You know what I mean? So catfish, we're catching some catfish at night. Hey, look, let's talk about what Wayne, Sean, and some of the boys down here, Dixon and all them guys, they've been doing at night. They've been venturing out there, and they've been looking outside the horizon of the bow and the spear, and they've come up with the darn blowgun. How about that? Hey, I'm telling you what, I'm ordering me a blowgun, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to try it. That looks like a lot of fun, fellas. Keep them videos coming, man. We love them. Let's see. Crappie bluegill, not hearing much on there. There's a few crappie, they're finding, and what they are finding is dark colored, they're ready to spawn, they're doing their thing. Bluegills that are around, they're fattening up, they're getting ready to get on them beds here in a couple more weeks too, so hopefully we'll see some bluegills starting to come out the water. A few big bass being caught, a couple 8.5 pounders, 9 pounders. I mean, Tommy down there, he got one, it was 8.45, I think. I know 3 other people this week that caught largemouth over 8 pounds, including myself.
What about that bluegill you caught today?
Oh, man. Look, let me tell you what, the bluegills that we've been catching in one of the ponds that we've been managing down here on the Eastern Shore is unreal. I mean, we had Happy Pat down here. That's what I call it, Pat. I had Happy Pat down here yesterday. We took him bluegill fishing, and he had never seen a 12-inch bluegill in his life. But you know what? He saw one yesterday, and we saw a few today. And we even had our guest out there fishing today, so we're anxious to talk about some of that too. So anyway, let's wrap that up, and let's get going. So
this week, we have Dave Sikorski. Dave is the executive director of Maryland CCA, or CCA Maryland.
Good enough. Either way.
How you doing today, Dave?
Doing well. Thank you, gentlemen.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, buddy.
Yeah, so I'm a Maryland native, a chicken necker. Grew up in Ellicott City, and I've always spent a lot of time on the shore hunting and fishing. I actually was telling Gary today while we were fishing, I caught my first rockfish in about 1993. I was born in 82, so, lived through the moratorium when I was a little kid on the Sassy Lady with Mike Willie out of Fishing Creek. Yeah. And we used to stay at the old, the Becky Phipps Inn right there on Slaughter Creek. And
oh, wow. How about that?
So I think back and been coming down to Dorchester County to have some fun and get outdoors for a long time. And I, still come down here and hunt and fish quite a bit. So I like to spend a lot of time down here. I currently live in Baltimore, and as the director of CCA, we're a state chapter of the nation's largest coastal and tidal water recreational angling group. So we're a membership organization, a 501c3, and we originally were founded in Texas in 1977. A group of folks from the Houston area, just like most anglers, would get off work and try and head to the coast and go fishing, and just continued to find declining conditions. There was issues with rampant overfishing and shallow water gill nets and all sorts of things impacting the redfish and speckled trout populations down there. And so the guys got together and created an organization. And since 1977, it's grown into about 19 state chapters, anywhere from Maryland south to Texas, and then the whole West Coast. And we're really just a grassroots recreational angling group. We try and put the resource first and follow science and get heavily involved in management and the politics of it. That's a big part of my job. But we represent the members of Maryland, and a lot like Ducks Unlimited, Trout Unlimited, a lot of the different sportsman groups, very similar to that. So I volunteered for CCA for a very long time as a small business, small building business that I worked in with my father. I was a real estate agent, a rental property manager, and started volunteering a lot on the fish policy side of things. Got heavily involved in understanding the science and how management all works together. And about a little over 3 years ago, I started working for CCA full time.
So let me ask you something. You guys been around a long time. You have a lot of members. What is the objective of CCA? I mean,
Yeah.
what is the long-term plan for the organization?
Absolutely, yeah. So this is actually our 25th year in Maryland. So we were founded in 1995 in Maryland, and in a similar fashion to the folks in Texas, a group of folks actually around the Easton and Centerville area got together, and that was our first chapter. It was called the Midshore chapter. And our stated mission is to conserve, promote, and enhance Maryland's marine resources for the benefit of the general public. And so if you think about recreational angling, there's not a very big bar to entry. Yes, you can go crazy and get very expensive, but fishing is something that's accessible to people of all different backgrounds, economic levels, and that's the way it should be. You should be able to walk onto a bridge and catch some fish. You can hop on a big boat and head offshore, and anything in between. And so we really are there to keep an eye out and make sure that recreational anglers have a say, and make sure that we educate people to understand what their impact can be on the resource, and so they can make judgment calls about their own activities. And then involved in the policy side of things, when you're talking about something like a natural resource, it's shared by a lot of different people, a lot of different opinions and reasons to use that resource. So we make sure that recreational anglers have a seat at the table here in Annapolis and state capitals throughout the country, and then also in Washington, D.C. So
You also do youth tournaments too, don't you?
what's that?
I said you also do youth tournaments.
Yes, yeah, we do a bunch of kids fishing
young
events.
people involved?
Yeah, we do one in Baltimore. We do one at the Waterfowl Festival. We try and do as many as we can, and since we're volunteer based, right now I'm the only employee. Our assistant director left earlier in February, and we're really reliant upon volunteer chapters. So we have chapters throughout the state. Each one of them has a banquet fundraiser, silent auction, live auction.
And how many chapters is that again in the state?
Ones that have had a fundraiser last year, there were 6 of them. There's been as many as about 10, and they ebb and flow. It depends on who's the most active, the core group of volunteers. And really it's just to become a chapter, you say, you know what, we're going to come together, work with folks throughout the state, do a little bit of fundraising, but also reach out into our local community and try and get kids involved in fishing. And we also do a big habitat program called the Living Reef Action Campaign.
Right.
That started in Westminster, Maryland. So in Inland County and Carroll County, folks got involved with the STEM programs in schools and started building reef balls, the concrete reef structure. We teach the kids all about what makes the bay work, the watershed, all the different animals, how they interact, the importance of clean water, what an oyster does to do that, how important
fantastic.
reefs and habitats are.
That is great.
Yeah, we've worked with a couple thousand kids in the last 5 years, built probably a little over 2,000 reef balls, put many of them in the bay already, and always looking to do more.
So it kind of sounds to me like, that the CCA is more, they're more interested, kind of like what we're trying to do with Snakeheads, educating the public, raising the awareness, and simply just building a better angler out here. You know what I mean? I mean, we need more of them, at our disposal.
Absolutely.
I think, JR kind of turned me on to you guys in the beginning, and I've donated myself to your organization, happily, man, because I believe in what you guys are doing.
Absolutely.
So keep that in mind, folks. The next time you see a fundraiser coming up or they're doing something out there and you want to get involved, it's real easy just to donate $25 to somebody that you care about or an organization that you're passionate about. So, I know you guys do a lot of that. And then the tournaments, you guys do some other tournaments besides the youth tournaments around the bay.
Yep.
You guys do a little bit of everything. Like, you represent a little bit of every species that's out there. I think that's the thing that I like. So let's talk a little bit about some of the tournaments that you guys have done, and what species, you guys include in the tournaments and things like that.
Yeah. So we actually have, it really depends on who's engaged in what areas and what the volunteer core in that area wants to do. And that's generally how a lot of our tournaments start. This year, in early June, we're not sure exactly what it's going to look like with everything changing this year, but we have our 17th annual Kent Narrows Fly and Light Tackle Tournament. So 17 years ago, folks got together and said, we want to have a rockfish tournament that's fly and light tackle. And for many years, we've kind of bounced around, but for the last many years, we've been at the Jetty Bar the first Saturday of June. And a couple years back, when we noticed the population changing in rockfish and declining, we turned it into a catch photo release tournament. We use the iAngler phone app to do that. And really to say that, look, you can go out and compete and have a good time. We're trying not to put a price on the fish's head necessarily.
Sure.
We don't do cash prizes.
Sure.
It's more about camaraderie and fun. And I mean, I love it. I'll be the MC at those events, and I love when kids will walk up and, there's some tackle laying there on the table that got donated. I'm making sure the kids go home with more stuff than the adults.
That's awesome.
That's
You know,
awesome.
I'm a big kid myself.
We all are.
We know. I know after fishing with you today, you big
Yeah.
kid. No.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a rockfish tournament. We've had one in Baltimore for quite a few years called Rocktober. Just last year, we went to a full month format where people would fish for 31 days, catch rockfish in October. We've had the red trout tournament in Crisfield that went on for 6 years. We took a pause last year. We're bringing that back, probably out of Buzz's Marina in St. Mary's County. So we really just kind of add on to things, but also we want to partner with folks. One of the big ones, one of my favorite ones to work with is the Fish for a Cure in Annapolis. They're raising money for the cancer center there at the Anne Arundel County Medical Center. That's in November. So we helped bring a catch and release division to their tournament with iAngler. And we're looking to partner all over the place. We got one over in Ocean City, the Fish and Paddle Slam. And we're willing to work with anybody just to help show up, talk about what we do. Love to have people sign up as members, but really just educate them on their impact on the fishery.
So we're talking about tournaments, but before we get into all that, I want to talk a little bit about you. Okay, what was the first fish that bit Dave? Like, what was the first fish you caught?
And guys, if you have any questions for Dave, just give us a comment and we'll read them out to him.
Yeah,
and we'll
yeah,
get them
yeah,
answered.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, I remember I grew up, my dad would tell you that when Centennial Lake was built in Ellicott City, Columbia,
Big gas.
that he walked over the hill with me on his shoulders when I was probably maybe not even 2 years old. They'd stocked the lake. It wasn't fully open yet. The park wasn't finished. And he said he caught like a 4-pound bass. And he tells me that story. And, I swear, I don't know if it's subconscious or what, but I swear I can remember that. And, I grew up in a family. My great-grandfather was a self-employed painting contractor, lived in Baltimore, then Ferndale. When he was off, he fished. And so it's in my genes. And, he continued to fish. My grandfather fished. My dad fished. So fishing's always been a part of the most important part of my life. Hunting came on when I got a little bit older. I don't know the exact fish in the moment that I was bit. I can tell you I do remember standing on the dock at the floating dock bar on Slaughter Creek. I think it was called the Boondocks at that point.
It was.
Yeah, I'll never forget. I was probably 16 years old. I drove up to Walmart in Cambridge. I bought a rod and reel, some tackle. Just got my driver's license, and I was standing at the end of the dock just watching these rockfish crash on bait in the lights. That stands out as a moment in this area where I was just like, you know what, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Just taking in all the sights and sounds of nature. I've been fortunate enough to just got married a couple years ago. I'm 38, so all my time from college until about then, I wandered the world. Spent every penny I
A
had.
lot of us done that. A lot of us done that a time or two.
Catching blue marlin one week and trout in the mountains the next week, and it's just been very fortunate that if it swims, I want to catch it.
So you're a pretty diverse angler. You're like me. If it bites the line and you can reel it in, you're going to go check it down. I don't care if it's a 6-inch striped killifish. I like catching them sometimes too.
Do you freshwater fish at all?
Yeah, I do. And cool. In fact, more and more these days, I have a young son and just a busy life, and I've got a few little spots I can get to more closely freshwater fishing. And the more complicated the policy gets surrounding the management of rockfish and other things in the bay, I find myself wanting to just disappear a little bit and sneak off into the mountains maybe and try something different. So
I feel you on that a lot of more days than not. I want to go somewhere
I
and
can
run
completely
away.
appreciate you're just running away and hiding somewhere.
Yes.
It's
that's
fantastic.
the point, right? I mean,
Exactly.
disconnect, look up at the stars.
So your favorite fish to catch today, what would you say is, or do you just not have one like you said, like anything?
It doesn't matter. I mean,
Okay.
the bluegill I
swims.
caught at Gary's today was probably my favorite one of the day. Those big old slabs.
God, they were pretty sick,
You
weren't
know.
they? So you talk about hunting. So you got a first hunting story here you want to share? You got any kind of adventures you want to talk about? A funny one where your buddy fell in the mud and anything like that?
So I'll never forget. I was, I've hunted all over the place and did a little bit of waterfowl guiding out of Tillman Island when I was in college. Would sleep on a friend's couch and set some decoys and take a party, and had no idea what I was doing, but been thoroughly obsessed with waterfowl hunting. I used to carve decoys and everything, and so
That's cool.
bought a boat. It's called a Banks Goliath, a pretty capable duck boat, and was able to get hull number 3. So I bought it in like 2005, and a very capable boat. And I was down at Hooper Island one time, and hunting with a buddy of mine, and he's at the helm of the boat in the dark. We're running in a following sea down the Honga River, and it's just, I mean, pitch black. He's 30 miles an hour. It's not calm, and I'm sitting here going,
know where this is going.
I just got this boat. Oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And since that point, so we set up, shot my first redhead that day, shot my first widgeon that day, and I went, wait, there's more than just buffleheads or mallards or wood ducks in the creek or whatever. And that kind of opened my eyes to the more birds that were out there. So I think that one really stands out. In fact, I was standing looking out in the Honga yesterday. I stayed at Hooper Island last night and was thinking about that hunt and all the hunts ever since, and all the great friends I've made hunting down out of that area. So
I think one of the coolest things for me, anyway, like when no matter when I go fishing somewhere, I think Gary can relate to that, and I think Eddie can relate to that. Whenever I go fishing anywhere and I get to a spot, I seem to always reminisce about things like a previous trip. What worked good this one time, and you got your buddy with you. Like, dude, I remember this one time we were down here and we caught 1,000 rockfish. You know what I mean? So I think that's the greatest thing about Eastern Shore and coming here is that you make and create so many memories to take back with you. You know what I'm saying?
And you see all these clubs and trailers and campers, and you go all over the place. And if you're a chatty person like I am, you end up you realize how small the world is, and how many generations of sportsmen have been enjoying this area, respecting it, taking care of it.
How many people you meet that know everybody Like you told me about Mike today. Mike and I graduated high school together, and you were talking about, I forget who else it was, and graduated high school. Oh, Diane, you went to
get
the tire change today. She was in my class.
Cambridge Tires, thank you today.
No, it's a small world.
It is a very small world. You run into people all the time.
So, let's talk about rockfish. Mm-hmm. You have some passion about rockfish.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about, because a lot of people ask me about rockfish here, and just from my standpoint, I'm out in the bay, so I don't see much in the decreased numbers of the areas I fish, other than, let's say, I'm seeing some decrease in Blackwater, as far as what's coming in there, what's reproducing. So we're not sure if that's related to something other than snakeheads or not,
right?
But not to even go there. So let's talk about rockfish. What is CCA's angle with rockfish? What do you guys want to accomplish with rockfish?
Yeah. I mean, we want to see a balance in who can access the resource, and if you want to get that, you have to have more. You want to have, people would say, manage for abundance, which is a very gray term, but more fish means more people can use it, and it's a lot easier to manage. Rockfish are, of course, our state fish. They're held in very high regard up and down the East Coast. Other states have them as the state fish or the official saltwater fish. They're the largest coastal fishery in the country, on the Atlantic coast. So from Maine to North Carolina, they're managed by a management body that includes states from Maine to North Carolina, the feds, D.C., Potomac. And I'm actually on an advisory panel to that body.
I want to talk about that, some of the things you do above and beyond with CCA.
Yeah, like the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. So as a volunteer, I just started getting heavily involved in it and trying to understand it. And that's what's key. I mean, if part of our mission is to educate people, you have to understand the ins and outs and all the pieces of the puzzle, because the average angler will fish X number of days a year, not nearly as many as you would hope. Every one of us wants to fish more than we do. So when you go out on the water and you keep your couple fish, you're not making a personal impact. But then if you add up the millions of anglers up and down the coast, it adds up to a big pile of fish.
Right.
So you have to understand that. That's an important piece to understand, and have that kind of personal ethic as to understanding your impact. And then, of course, there's commercial, there's recreational. That makes it complicated, because two different groups with different, totally different management schemes, totally different driving forces. Commercial guys trying to make a living, recreational guys having fun. But recreational, if you add it all up, is a much bigger economic impact. It's just a different economic impact too. So that leads to a lot of complexity there. And then ultimately, you're trying to manage a fish. And if you take the people out of that equation, the politics of people, you're still trying to count something you can't see. It has a tail. It moves. Some days it eats. Some days it doesn't. Some days you can catch it at net. Sometimes you can't. So trying to put all that data together and that information into a management plan, which is what these states do in the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, is an extremely daunting task.
It sounds massive. That
It's
just
insane.
sounds massive to me.
Yeah. And so it gets very, very complicated. And, especially with social media these days, you don't have to look very far to find people arguing with each other.
Sure.
I always tell people, I think that's, not very productive. We learn from each other, and if you're speaking fact and respecting each other, you can do a lot better.
Exactly.
Because we are cooperating to manage this resource, whether we like it or not. And it's going to be a lot easier if we sit down and talk about our differences and try and find common ground. So that's my mentality. And I find that mentality to be the same amongst a lot of CCA members. I think a lot of recreational anglers, even though they're a little bit upset by limits changing, seasons changing, this group getting more than that group, so on and so forth. In the end, if you tell people, hey, we're going to do this for a little bit, it's going to be what's best for the fish, most folks are willing to say, okay, I get it.
And I know we're going to talk about COVID later, but that's kind of like this whole COVID thing. We've done what people have asked us to do,
Yeah, everybody's just doing their best to get through this.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the rockfish, with how things changed the past couple of years. Everybody knows something's off.
Yep.
Nobody knows what the right answer is yet, but we're working together to try to figure out what the best answer is for
You
them.
got to do something, and it's got to serve everybody.
That's exactly right.
That's the tough thing.
Well, and you can't forget, as a Chesapeake Bay angler, you live in the nursery.
Right.
That's right.
You're going to see a ton of young yearfish, the little
Right.
little
And see,
guys.
that's what
And
I
the
see
next,
here
and the next,
all
and the next.
summer long, lots of them, So that's why I said the comment that I said, I'm not out there. I know you guys are out there, and the public needs to know what's out there.
Yeah, it's got to be beyond what you can see, beyond what you experience as an individual. The managers, like I said, have a really tough job, but they bring all that into focus. Yes, there's a lot of politics in it, but there's politics in everything in life, and it just is what it is.
How I don't want to open this can of worms up, but how do you feel that this menhaden fishery is affecting some of the rockfish?
So it's no different than, like, you take the snakehead fishery, right? All these animals have their place in the ecosystem.
That's why I
and
asked.
when they're small, they could be food for something that's bigger. Hey, that same thing, like a snakehead fry could be food for a largemouth bass. And then the reverse could be, is going to happen.
Exactly.
Menhaden are the most numerous and the most important forage species or food fish for rockfish, for bluefish, weakfish, cobia, marine mammals, birds, all these different things, and they're all connected. So if you got a rockfish and I say it's kind of like going down the road, and if you have 4 different restaurants that are open, you get a little bit of an option, right? Rockfish is an apex predator. It can pick all sorts of different things. It's going to eat what's in front of it and what's available, but menhaden are the best for them. They're the most protein packed. They're really designed to eat a fish like that. It's smooth and oily. They can slurp it down. So that's why rockfish are so connected to menhaden. So managers are actually right now just starting to put together scientific models that connect that ecosystem role of the health of rockfish versus the health of a menhaden to try and help set the judgment that managers are making. And so they're actually saying, for the first time ever, if there's this many menhaden we try and maintain in the ecosystem, we expect rockfish to go in this trajectory. And a lot of people are, say, oh, well, rockfish eat all the crabs and there's too many of them. Well, yeah, they're a predator. They're going to eat what's available to them. But if you leave more options in the water for them, there's going to be a better balance.
So let me ask you this. Like, I'm not a menhaden expert. I don't know anything about the fleets. I don't know anything about how that whole thing goes. But, I read articles just like everybody else.
Yep.
So I guess my question is, they're netting these menhaden with these huge nets and they're encircling them. How many rockfish are getting pulled with that menhaden when they're doing that? Yeah. So is that, are they looking to that side to see if there's any negative impact? We know there's some, but what is the magnitude of that impact? You know
so
what
the impact I already explained is the food factor, right? How they connect in the food web. You're talking about actually impacting a non-targeted
I'm just
species.
saying, like, when they're pulling that net in,
bycatch.
the bycatch. How much bycatch is with them menhaden feeding?
They really don't know. And there's, within the management plan, there's some standards that they apply to that kind of gear, a purse seine. There's definitely predators caught in purse seines. There's you don't have to look far to find a picture of a big old bull red drum laying on a deck of a boat. There's some really videos that led to a lot of conflict down in the Gulf. Big bull red drum getting caught up in those nets, pelicans, other things. Down the lower bay, I think it's less. So purse seining, that activity is banned in Maryland and has been since 1931. So we were smart in 1931. We said, if we're going to catch menhaden, LY, bunker, the bait fish, we're using pound nets. It's an artisanal gear. It's been there forever. And yeah, they catch a lot. I think it's anywhere from 5 million to 10 million pounds a year. But it's crab bait, right? And it's this gear where if the wind doesn't blow and the tide doesn't work right, they're not catching menhaden.
And they're not searching with airplanes to find them either.
Yeah. So Omega is going out, the lone company that catches menhaden in the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic coast, for reduction. So they reduce it for meal to go into food products. They're also feeding farm-raised salmon, because the company that owns Omega now is the world's largest aquaculture company. So they're grinding up the food system here. They're potentially catching predators. Even if they're not catching predators, they're removing a food source from them at that moment. And yeah, more fish do move into the system. But from a biomass perspective, it's just not sustainable. They're taking their limit last year was 51,000 metric tons.
Jesus.
A metric ton's a little bit bigger than a standard ton. It's like, a ton's 2,000 pounds. It's like 2,000 and change.
Right.
So they went over that cap quite a bit.
I saw.
Yep. They got in trouble. Now this year their limit's been reduced. They're out there in the Chesapeake right now, and they are flying with spotter planes. They send these boats in and take up the whole thing.
I don't know if anybody's ever seen them, but I've been out, and you see the trawlers going out, and they're going in a direction. You see an airplane fly over kind of low, and you'll see the boat is heading like this, and it just goes to this mega 90 and go right towards where.
I guess in my mind right now, I'm thinking, I just think about that tonnage that you just explained to me. And in my mind, I'm thinking, how many? I mean, it just can't be one or two rockfish hitting the deck.
Right.
Well,
they say it's like less than 1%, or I think it's around 1% is bycatch.
I don't know if I could buy that.
Yeah, but 51,000 metric tons.
Right.
Right. That's 120 some thousand.
Okay. Yeah. So that would make sense. Okay.
Pounds, or it's 120 million pounds, I think. So you think about that. 1% of that is a lot of rockfish if they're catching them. It's a lot of weak fish. It's a lot of croaker. It's a lot of cobia. It's a lot of king mackerel, Spanish
I didn't think
mackerel.
about that. So it's a lot deeper than just those
Well,
rockfish.
it's a lot of
Okay.
food too for those fish
Absolutely.
that are left.
Yep.
So I want to ask a tough question. I ask some tough questions. Where does CCA stand with the northern snakehead? Without causing any controversy, basically as a group,
Yeah. No, so, to give an idea, a little bit of an idea of how we come up with our policies, we have a government relations committee that our volunteer leadership are welcome to serve on and weigh in on, and we try and come up with a group consensus-based decision within CCA. We also work with our national partners and other groups. And
you've also worked with several of the biologists that have done the studies here, too.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, well, it's plain and simple. An invasive species doesn't belong. And no invasive species should be released into a system. That's completely against the sportsman ethic. We shouldn't spread them around, period. We should take out what we can. Do I think we will ever succeed in removing them?
Absolutely not.
It's going to be tough. I mean, and yes, you can make lemonade out of lemons. I mean, look at the Sika deer. It's driving tons of hunting down here that brings tons of economic benefit. And, now Dorchester County has another invasive species. And, if an individual angler wants to release a fish, who am I to say you can't? But from a biological perspective, what's best for the future, you should be catching these fish, harvesting them, eating them. They are a fantastic fish to eat. I don't care what size they are. Take them home, give them to your neighbors. That's what we should be doing as sportsmen, is trying to fix the problem that really some anglers are spreading them right now.
Especially right now when it's a good chance your neighbor's broke right now. So with nobody working. So
there's nothing better than going out and standing 6 feet apart, whatever the CDC tells us to do, and bringing home a fresh dinner.
I'd never have a problem giving away fish.
No. In fact, I got I stopped up on the chop tank this year with the white perch run, which was out going great. Caught a bucket full of white perch on opening day of turkey season, and did it again a couple days later. And man, I went, man, gosh, do I miss this? Just not having as much time to get out and get a fresh fish dinner for your family. And snakeheads are ooh.
I know that we're getting up on our time, so I want to start nailing down some things. You sure we're good?
Yeah.
Okay.
I could talk forever if you let me.
So I know that you fish over in the Potomac. You've got some connections over there. Got some connections around the Bay. Are people concerned that you're talking to in some of the places that they're showing up? I mean, and what are they saying to you? Being that you're so spread around.
Yeah.
What are they saying to you about numbers? They saying, I only got a handful here. I know they're not getting any better. Oh, we got plenty of minnows. They're not doing anything. So what are the CCA members as a whole seeing when they're out in their kayaks or they're out and they're snakehead fishing in these different tributaries like the Potomac and the Patuxent and the Patapsco and the Magathie and the Severn and the Sassafras? I mean, they're everywhere. We know that.
Yeah.
So I think what are your people saying?
I'm hearing a lot of people. I've heard of a little bit of a plateau in some spots in the Potomac. Maybe that's the wrong word. That's what I've heard, and I don't know how realistic it is. I mean, because just like I was fishing for them this morning, they didn't bite. They were surrounded, right? So recreational fishing gear is not a good way to survey and understand a true population dynamic, right? But ultimately, they're established, period, the end, in the Potomac, and it's amazing how fast they're spreading up and down the western shore. And if you take the other, hot topic, the other invasive we have, the blue catfish, released initially in the 70s in Virginia. And it seems like it took them forever to get to where they are in the Potomac. And now they're everywhere in the state, too. And to me, that's just as concerning because they're
It is.
another predator that we just don't know much about.
And I want to make the point that you just made. It took how many years to see it?
Yeah.
Now we're 10 into it, and everybody's saying, hey, it's, 10 years is not enough, and if you really look at the data collected and really have a, clear mind, I guess. I don't, not saying anything bad, but when I look at the data and I look at it, I can't look away and say, man, I think I'm going to go take me some up Black Raven next week.
Right.
That's
just
I
irresponsible.
can't go there.
It's
irresponsible.
right.
Completely irresponsible. It's proof that people are selfish. There's no question about it. But that's just completely selfish to your citizens today and even in the future. Think about rockfish, right? 70 to 90% of the rockfish population on the East Coast spawns in the Chesapeake. There was a time where they spawned in the Roanoke River. They do, but they're not migrating.
Prevalent.
So the body of fish is kind of moving north. It's maybe getting a little smaller. Who knows? They're spawning in the Delaware and the Hudson, but 70 to 90%. Maryland anglers have a responsibility to take care of those rockfish so they can grow up and move on.
I agree.
Now, the baby rockfish live in the Blackwater. They're spawning in the Nanticoke. They spawn in the Chop Tank. They spawn in the Potomac. They spawn all over the place. But we have like the 5 most major spawning places in the country. And then it takes a male striped bass will take 6, 7, 8 years living in the Chesapeake. So how's he going to make it through the gauntlet that already exists? And then he's got a blue cat as a neighbor now, a snakehead as a neighbor now. I mean, the largemouth bass is non-native to the Chesapeake. They were right over the mountain, but they're also another predator. So
I think a big problem is people don't understand the difference between non-native and invasive.
Yeah.
That's a big distinction that not enough people make.
exactly. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And there's no question there's non-native stuff all around.
oh
us,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
invasive is where it's making that major impact. And
Well, like you said about the second
yeah.
for the most part, second deer are non-native.
Right.
Yep.
They really don't impact anything besides crops, which all deer do.
Oh, they definitely impact the farmers.
Yeah.
And
A
phragmitis,
little bit
which
at a
is an
time.
invasive
Tiny
species.
little tummy.
Yeah. And they eat some phragmitis, which is an invasive species.
That's
So,
crazy to eat that, though.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, and they filled a little niche. And
I
as
know.
Dorchester County changed and the whitetails kind of slid north because the habitat changing, they filled right in.
Yeah.
So it can be a good story in many ways. But
Right.
snakeheads and blue cats, other than
So-
there's some way to fill your frying pan.
Right. I mean, I honestly,
Ecologically, they're
I
not
sit
good.
back all the time. People ask me all the time, and I hate to say this, but like, Kaz, I know, I think you hate snakeheads. I don't hate snakeheads. I just hate seeing what's unfolding,
Right.
and the people that are pushing to move them, that kind of stuff. You know? And there's a lot of it going on. And NRP knows. I mean, they call me every other day. Hey,
They're so
this cat,
stretched in, too.
this cat. I'm like, well, I don't know him, but
Yeah, if anybody that controls the budget's listening, NRP needs more money.
I agree.
I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, do people really want to do that to their common man? It's immature as far as I'm concerned. It's irresponsible. I'm not afraid to say that. But people are going to keep doing it.
So
people are selfish.
Yep.
So the snakeheads, we've touched on that. You play a big role in iAngler.
Yes.
Let's talk about iAngler.
Absolutely. So the Angler Action Foundation, which used to be called the Snook and Game Fish Foundation, was created in Florida right after the big snook and redfish freeze that happened, I think, around 2010. And I was involved in a work group that was trying to bring together a version of iAngler called Chesapeake Catch to be used for the same reason. And what it is a smartphone app that can help drive data towards the fishery managers. In the case of Florida, there's snook and redfish and trout, speckled trout, huge fisheries, wildly important. And overnight, all these fish were floating up dead, and other fish, right? And so they wanted to empower anglers with a technological tool to help the managers understand what they're seeing, what they're catching, what the length frequencies are, so what size fish they're catching, all these things that are important in fisheries management. So iAngler was a tool that came out of it. So ultimately, I got to know the director and some of the folks there as when I was a CCA volunteer. When I came on board as director, February of 17, I decided that all our fishing tournaments would be based on iAngler, and I would work to try and promote that platform because it's a tremendous platform that any fishing club, any group of folks can work with the Angler Action Foundation, and it's a small fee. They can set up this really easy platform to catch and photo the fish they're competing for. But there's also just like the original mission, which was to get information to fisheries managers, there's a scientific piece of it. And so that's iAngler is the scientific piece where they're really trying to help what's called a stock assessment or a scientific analysis of the population. Then there's iAngler Tournament, which anybody in the kayak bass world has seen it. That's a whole other way to compete.
And that's kind of what I want to touch on, because
Yeah.
the importance of this program that's implemented now is that not only can we see real data,
Yep.
but iAngler can now share with Joe Love
Yep.
and Josh Newhart and all of our biologists that are trying to gather data that don't have the time to be out there 24 hours
Yeah,
a
they
day.
don't have the time, the budget, the
This
ability
is
to do it.
amazing. It's
Look
amazing.
how many man hours of fishing.
Oh my goodness.
Oh.
I mean, let's
One
talk about how many
tournament will do.
times Jim comes down here and sits out here for 8 hours a
Does his
day,
gut content,
doing his gut content, down here on the weekends doing it. Hey, Jimmy, we miss you. Anyway, so, I mean, this is big. I mean, this is big for the fisheries. This is big for the biologists. This is huge, man.
Yeah, and
I'm digging it.
I've been so fortunate to make fishing my job. Not necessarily going fishing, but I'm talking fishing all day, every day,
Sure.
right? And you meet all these fisheries biologists and stuff, and every single one of them got into it because they just love the outdoors. They love they're inquisitive, right? They always want to find out, answer the next question. We have some tremendous resources at Maryland DNR, and if we're willing to help them
Absolutely.
and partner with them,
Yep.
it's always easier said than done. But we're actually in the middle of conversations right now about how we can come up with a proper partnership, follow the different privacy laws and stuff that exist within state government, but have anglers provide information. And DNR does have their app. They do have a volunteer angler log you can participate in. But what we found out, and I've been told by others around the country, is when you have other partners on board, you're more likely to get more people involved. But if you're doing things kind of standalone in little silos, less people participate.
Right.
So you got to grow that following, and that's the idea that we're talking with
And so
Maryland DNR
the
about.
more people who can run their tournaments through iAngler, it just creates a better database for the state to work through.
Absolutely.
And Derek, I see your question there. We're going to get to you in just a minute, buddy. I'm not forgetting you here, okay? I got a guy here that wants to ask you about. Derek Souders, it wants to know, can you guys talk about what happened to the croaker?
Sure.
So, if you anything you want to feed on that?
Yeah, so croaker are also managed by the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. They're a relatively short-lived species, very similar to spot. I think they're managed in the same management plan. So these short-lived species, there's very little you can do to control the harvest impact, unless there's like a massive harvest, a big commercial harvest. So croaker, if you talk to old-timers, they've gone in cycles, ups and downs, and there's definitely that natural cycle which occurs with many species. We're a part of it. We impact it in many ways. I would tell you that a big part of where the croaker are today is related to the health of the bottom in the Chesapeake. A big part of that is related to what comes down through the watershed, the Susquehanna, the Potomac, you name
God,
it.
we could do a whole episode
Yeah.
on that.
So you get algae decomposes, sinks to the bottom, removes oxygen. We have dead zones.
Right.
There are sections of the bay which have not had oxygen for a decade, if not more. The croaker feed on the bottom. They feed on the worms and all the things on the bottom, so they've lost the ability to even have a place they can live. And even if the water quality is good while they're there, if the bottom's dead, it
I
just
get
doesn't
it.
work.
There's
right?
no food
So you're
source,
shrinking
right?
their potential.
Right,
and
right.
then there's another whole impact of they are, of course, a prey species to many big animals. Folks would say it relates to some big catches, also weak fish in a similar situation. They kind of disappeared overnight. There were some big catches in certain wintertime areas where they're kind of congregated in the wintertime. We've got spiny dogfisher through the roof historically in the last many decades. They're a big predator. Then you have shrimp trawls in inland waters, especially in North Carolina. When you're shrimp trawling in shallow water, it's something like 9 or 10 pounds of bycatch for every 1 pound of shrimp that you're landing.
Oh, wow.
And that's juvenile, weak fish, hardheads, spot, maybe some rockfish in some areas, speckled trout, red drum, all these juvenile species. And it's wasted. So all those pieces come into play, and it's very tough for managers to take a single action and maybe reduce your bag limit to solve that problem. But actually there is some control and tightening up coming up of croaker and spot right now.
So back to iAngler. I just don't want to miss his question.
Yeah.
So, me
I
and
don't know if I have a
you.
real answer, unfortunately.
It's okay. Well, at least you explained some, and we can make some understanding of it. So back to iAngler. The good thing about this that we were talking about before this show is that we're going to be able to gather data for the biologists. We're going to be able to give them some information that they're lacking, but I think that we could also maybe possibly add a gut content thing to that for like snakeheads and blue cats, and then like all these guys like Jimmy and them guys, maybe it saves them. There's extra time that could be spent back at the lab working on something. You know
We
what I
can
mean?
grow the data set exponentially.
I think that this is a great opportunity for anglers to get involved and feel like they're part of something. Man, I'm so glad that we're talking about this today.
Yeah. You could literally gut your fish, take a picture of it, measure your fish, take a picture of it. That's how iAngler works,
Right.
and just provide tons of data to managers.
I did say we were going to talk about this, right? But let's keep talking about what we're talking about right now, and then get back to that. So that way you hang in here, and we'll talk about them giant snakeheads we're going to be selling down here at Wolfer Store. Okay, so we talked about tournaments. We talked about let's touch on this, Eddie.
Okay.
You know, right now, so everybody knows out there, we've put everything on hold till next week.
Right.
And then we will talk about
We'll talk about what we're doing with tournaments next week.
And what we're doing with the festival.
Because
and
we're
where
still trying to figure things out with the whole COVID situation. It's definitely new territory for everybody, and we're playing it by ear for the moment. But it's
and
Well, it changes all the time.
Exactly.
And I don't want to take anything from the limelight from you two, but you two just got an email, very special email.
yes, we got to
you know, about tournaments. So while we're talking about iAngler, let's talk about what BNR just sent out as far as what we can do as far as crowds and all that stuff. So Dave, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so as the governor announced this week, we're shifting into phase one. And so with the stay-at-home order, obviously if you stay at home, you shouldn't be out fishing. They've laxed it up. You shouldn't be having fishing tournaments was the final word. And if you're having a striped bass tournament, you actually have a striped bass permit. The Secretary of DNR authorizes you to have a competition with striped bass. And so those permits were issued before COVID. Now then they got put on hold with the stay-at-home order. And we just got an email that in-person tournaments that gather people together are still on hold until further notice.
Right.
But we can have virtual tournaments.
so the iAnglers can
Yep.
tournaments can
you're
absolutely
out
proceed
there-
right now.
I always say fishing was the original social distancing if you're doing it right. So you can get out there and safely enjoy some time on the water.
So Sammy Snakehead, what do you think about all that? I'm scared to death. Oh my God, they're gonna catch us all. Ah!
That's the cats I love.
So the good news is we're gonna be able to have some
We
tournaments.
will be having some tournaments. We're just not sure
Just
what it's
trying
going to look
get
like
this
yet.
figured out. So that's what I wanted. I wanted you guys to tell them
Right.
about this email, and you know that we are moving forward with something.
Right. Our first tournament was originally scheduled to be this coming weekend. Obviously, that's not going to happen. We're going to have to work some things out for what's going to happen in the future.
Right.
But the iAngler situation definitely allows us to proceed. Maybe not in the way we originally planned, but it allows us to proceed in a different way. So.
Right. And I think some other things that just so y'all know we're going to try to implement if we can get the stuff is we're going to have some potluck tournaments, just pop-up tournaments
Right.
here and there, 20 guys come down, pitch in the pool, go out and get them, come back, let's eat some dinner and split the money up. You know what I mean? So we're going to do some stuff like that. We're going to keep it fun. We're going to keep the adventures going the best we can. We're not going to let this COVID-19 hold us down.
No.
We do our best to stay together and be a team and bring it all together. You know what I mean?
So it's definitely not going to keep us down, but it just changes the way things work. Going to work a little bit. That's all.
Ain't nothing kept us down at all. We've been going nonstop, ain't we? So let's go ahead and talk about this right here.
So this mount was built by Barry Taylor. For those of you who don't know Barry, he's been coming in the store for quite a while. He does snakehead mounts. This is a replica. It's not a skin mount. But for anybody who catches a big snakehead, he does a really good job with it, as you can see. We posted a picture earlier this week, and we had some comments about the teeth. The way he set the teeth up, he knows that's not where the teeth actually. Let's show him the teeth real quick, Kaz. And he knows that's not where the teeth actually are. They're a little bit more recessed.
Snakehead right here.
But he just did it that way for looks, just so people could see how it looks like.
Look how good they look right there. I like that.
I do too. I like it the way it
That
looks.
looks great, man.
I know it's not the exact replica of where the
Looks
teeth are, but
bluefishy.
I think it looks great.
Looks like a bluefish.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I think he does a really good job.
does a great job.
Yeah, if you can't figure out where the teeth are, just stick your finger in there.
But yeah, Barry, if you want to get a replica made of a big fish you catch, definitely take a picture with it as soon as you catch it and submit that. But you can freeze the fish and get it to him. He's in the store here all the time if you catch it in this area. If not, you can give him a call to make other arrangements to get the fish to him. I'll put his cell phone number in the show notes after we're done.
What are we talking average?
Oh, he says he's talking about a 6-month turnaround time, and he charges $20 an inch. So
Now $20 an inch. Does that include the Driftwood too, or is that additional, or we don't know that?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm
We'll
assuming
find out.
it would include Driftwood. We can definitely ask
Find
him.
out.
So,
We'll find out.
but I can definitely edit the show notes to include his contact information. But I think it looks great. I mean,
I think it's amazing, man. The
it's
color on it. Oh
he
my
did a
God,
fantastic
man.
job with the skin color and everything.
Everybody's coming here and seeing it, said it's absolutely beautiful. You did a good job.
Yeah, he
Great
definitely
job.
did. So, anyone more, Skaz?
Yeah, so let's go one more. Look, folks, don't forget about the bait boys, Damien and Cornflower down here selling snakehead destroyers. We got them wholesale in a lot of different tackle shops. You can check out Anglers, you can check out Denton, you can check out Shore Sportsman, you can check out Tuckahoe Sports, and we got many more that are coming on board. Also, don't forget when you're down here at the Wolford store to stop in and get your snakeheadlife.com decals. We've got a lot of new designs on the way. Apparel will be showing up here real soon in the store in the next couple of weeks, so we'll have all that taken care of. And yes, I have one more thing. From now on, every customer or every guest we have here on the show gets one of these from us. So here's your sack of shit. I don't know if we can say that, Dave. Thank you for everything today, my friend.
A sack of shit from somebody that's full of shit.
That's right. There you go. Bam! Kapow!
Oh boy, we're gonna get a hit list now.
Oh man!
So did they put 2 podcasts a week?
Oh man! So I think that about wraps it up this week, guys.
This was a lot of fun.
This-
Let's
I
just
love
take
doing
one
this.
more look. and
Yeah,
see
make sure
if
we didn't miss
got-
any
got
questions.
Anything else in here? JR said he's coming down tomorrow. He's ready for some Eastern Shore lunch, Eddie. So
we got
him and
plenty
his
of that.
daughter are coming. We'll take care of that.
Amen.
I'm going to take them fishing tomorrow.
There you go.
It's just good
Bill
to be back.
Dickerson,
man.
hey,
It is.
everybody. Hey, thanks for watching. And
Man,
I'm done. No more.
I've missed doing this, man. This,
too,
this is
man.
always fun doing
I got
this.
so excited today, man. Like, I could have just jumped in the camera and gave everybody a kiss.
Dave, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. It was a
My
blast
pleasure.
having you. You gave a lot of good information.
Yeah, man.
Very,
Appreciate it,
very
Dave.
much appreciate it.
Anytime I can come to God's country, I'm a happy man. Don't too many people come. Just one at a time. Come by Wolford.
That's right. So for Gary, Kaz, myself, thank you all for watching, and we're going to catch you all next time.